So there was a young yeshiva bacher that would attend his shiurim, his lessons at yeshiva every single day. And one day he noticed a strange phenomenon. The Rosh Yeshiva, who was sitting in the front of the class, at one point picked his head up from his sefer, and he announced a question to the class. After a while, no one was able to answer the question, but suddenly from above, a paper floated down. One of the students picked it up and delivered it to the Rosh Yeshiva. He opened it up and he read, and it was an answer to his question. And this happened regularly. So there was this yeshiva bacher that used to sit there, started wondering, like, what's the deal here? Like, listen, maybe it could be coming from Shemaim, but let's be real. Like, come on. So eventually he asked one of the alter bacher and one of the older guys in the class, and he says, "Yo, what gives? What's the deal? Like, where's that coming from?" So the alter bacher was like, "Nah, it's a bit above your pay grade." And he begged him, and the alter bacher said, "Fine, I'll tell you." He says, our Rosh Yeshiva is a genius, but there's one that's even higher than him, and that's his daughter. His daughter is even smarter than him, and she sits up there above us all day studying. And whenever he has a question, he throws out the question, and right away she stops her studying, she writes down the answer, and she floats it down. So this young bacher listening to this was just astounded. What kind, like, she must be the most incredible girl ever. And this continued to happen for a while. And the more he thought about it, the more he was enamored by her, the more he felt like he was falling in love with her. And so he asked the alter bacher again one day, do you know anything about her? Is she married? Like, is she looking to, marry? And the alter bacher laughed at him, and he's like, dude, it's the Rosh Yeshiva's daughter. You should probably lay off. And he was just like, he couldn't. He felt like this was, he was just floored by her. So one day he gathered the courage, and he came up to the Rosh Yeshiva, and he says, Rabbi, and the Rosh Yeshiva picked his head up, and he says, yes, how can I help you? And he says, Rabbi, I have heard about your daughter, and I think I'm in love with her. I ask sincerely and humbly if you could see, perhaps, maybe, that, you'd be willing to give me her as a wife. And the Rosh Yeshiva all of a sudden got really serious. And he says, kid, you better think about this long and hard. He says, oh, I have. I can't stop thinking about it. I think I'm in love with her. So the Rosh Yeshiva said, how about this? I'm going to tell you straight off the bat that there is a condition to marry my daughter. And that condition is you don't get to see her, like physically see her, until after the wedding. So I'm going to tell you to go home, take a week, think about this, think about how serious you are about this. And if it's still something you want to discuss, we'll talk in a week. So the kid, young yeshiva guy, goes home and continues obviously to attend classes, but he's now, thinking about this. And the more he thinks about it, the more into it he is. He says, wow, if she's that smart, I can only imagine how God created her beauty as well, like to match that. Like, she must be insanely gorgeous. And the more he thought about it, the more he was just convinced that I don't care about the condition, I'm in. So he comes back a week later and he says, sir, I've thought it through all the way and I'm in. I'm in with the condition involved, whatever, I'm in. So the Rosh Yeshiva decided, okay, you know what? He's a good Torah scholar. He's a sincere young man. I accept. So it was a big celebration. They had the wedding. And after the wedding, he goes back home to the apartment for the first time with his new bride. And he's never seen her yet. And he's about to see her for the first time that night. And as she's preparing to unveil, she says to him, listen, I want to make a condition with you before I unveil. And he's just like, sure, anything. I love you. I love you. She says, no. Okay, just slow down a second. I want you to promise me that no matter what happens tonight, no matter what you see tonight or whatever, you'll stick it through the night. Tomorrow is a different story, but your obligation and your vow to me, the condition is that you'll stick it through the night, and from then on it's whatever. He says, what do you mean through the night? I'm in it for life. I'm forever. You're my girl. I love you. There's nothing. I'm in. And he's like, she says, okay, slow down again. She says, also, I would like you to give me some article of yours, just in case, God willing, tonight we manage to bring forth a soul to this world. I want to be able to give something to the kid and say, this is from your father, so something to remember your father. She's like, what are you talking about? I love you. I'm going to be with you forever. Don't worry about it. She says, okay, fine. Either way, so they spoke it out, and he said, fine. How about the talis you gave me? You gave me this talis for my wedding. That'll be the article as per the condition. But like I said, it's not going to matter because I love you. I love you forever, and we're going to be together forever, and it's going to be great. Okay. So now she unveils, and he is horrified. Like, there's ugly, and then there's like distortion of every kind of like Picasso ugly. And she was just so ugly. She even had like a likeness of a bit of an ox in her face. And the story was told by Rabbi Shlomo Karlebach, and he even said himself that sometimes, if in the midst of giving birth, a frightening situation arises and a woman feels threatened by something, that thing that threatens her, frightens her, can even cause the effect that the likeness of the child's face will take on the characteristics of the thing that frightened her. And indeed, it was brought that when this young girl was born, when she was a baby, the mother probably was frightened by some kind of ox that was stampeding by or ran by. Either way, that's perhaps why she was like seemingly half girl and half ox in the likeness of her face. One thing's for certain, that we all have a certain likeness above, and it's not necessarily always the case that likeness above is reflected in the likeness we see below. But back to the story. The newly married groom is horrified, but per the condition, he had to stick it through the night. And as the night progressed, eventually she started pretending to sleep. And obviously then she noticed as he slowly got up, put his belongings together, and kicked out, leaving everything but his talis. Indeed, she did manage to have a child, a baby boy, from this encounter, but the husband wasn't seen again. So the kid grew up, and the kid had one of the best teachers, his mother, who we said already was smarter than the Rosh Yeshiva of her father. And she grew up learning from her grandfather, was the Rosh Yeshiva, and from her, who was even greater than him. And the kid was just brilliant. And to him, having grown up with his mother all his life, he didn't see any issue with her. He thought that she was beautiful inside and out. And so he also always had this question of, where's my father? Who's my father? Why did he leave? And everything like that. And she said, he could tell that she really loved him by the way she spoke about him. But she said, I don't know where he is. And, maybe as you get older, when the time's right, I'll tell you a little bit more about him. But he continued to have these questions, as you could imagine, is natural. By the time he hit bar mitzvah, the questions even got stronger. And eventually she said, you know what? I think it's time that you learn the truth. And so she told the whole story, and how he probably couldn't handle how ugly she was, and he booked it. And she said, and he left this talis. Now it's yours. It's the only thing we have left of your father. But the kid couldn't understand. To him, his mother was so beautiful, and how could he could tell by the way she spoke about the husband that he was a good person, and he just couldn't understand this. It was too much for him. And he got this idea in his head that he just couldn't let go of, that, one day when hopefully as he got a little older, he would go and he'll find his father and he would reunite him with his mother. And so after a few years went by, he told his mother, I can't stay here any longer. I'm sorry. I just can't keep living like this. I need to find my father. I need to. And she understood. And so the kid left, traveling the world in search of his father. One point he eventually came to Istanbul, And as he came there to the Jewish area of Istanbul, there was a bit of a sorrowful feel in the streets. Turns out that the chief rabbi had just lost his wife. So they were burying her, and there was going to be a Shiva process. Either way, all of a sudden the kid thought, great, the chief rabbi must be a very learned man, must be a very wise man. Maybe he has some kind of wisdom to impart on me that will help me in my search for my father. So he found out where the shul was, where the chief rabbi, was in charge, and where he davened. And he made sure to go there next morning early, and he tried to find a place near where the chief rabbi situated himself, and he donned the talis that his father had left him. And he was in the middle of praying when the chief rabbi stood up and started making a bit of a round around the synagogue. And all of a sudden, he saw this young man with this talis. And he came up to the young man and he said to him, "Where did you get this talis from?" So the young man said, "It was my father's." So the chief rabbi said, "If you wouldn't mind, I see you're not from around here. Perhaps you'll stay afterwards. I can ask you a few questions. We can get to know each other." So the young man was, "Yeah, great, of course." So after the tefillah, after the prayers finished, they sat together, and the chief rabbi again asked, "Where did you get this talis you said?" And he said, "It was from my father." And the chief rabbi let out a bit of a sigh, and he says, "Well, that was my talis. I believe I'm your father." And the kid couldn't believe it, his luck, after so many years of searching. And he spent some time with his father, and he got to know him, and he was a really special individual. And he says, "What ashgacha pratis? That your second wife just passed away as I got here, and all I want to do is reunite you with, you need to come back and be with my mother. She's incredible. She's so special. You didn't really it was one day, you didn't give her a chance. This is the opportunity." And chief rabbi looked down and he said, "I'm sorry. I don't think I can. I don't know how to tell you this. I just don't think I can do it." And the kid couldn't understand, but he figured, what, maybe if I stay here a while longer and I spend more time with him, and maybe I can get him to come around. And after weeks and weeks, he realized that he was getting nowhere. It's just not going to happen. This chief rabbi his father wasn't going to come back. So eventually he said his goodbye and he headed home. And as he was walking home through the forest near where his mother lived, all of a sudden it just hit him like a brick wall. He had gone out to try and find his father, and I'm sure he thought to himself, my mom had so much hope that I would succeed and that finally she would be reunited with him, and that we could be a whole family, and how much it will crush her that I come back unsuccessful. And all of a sudden he just collapsed to the ground, and he's sobbing on the ground, and he starts praying. He says, "Why, Hashem? Why?" And as his eyes clear up from the tears, he looks up and he sees this man standing before him. Turns out it was Elijah the prophet. And Elijah, tells the boy to stand up. And he says, "I want you to take this." And he hands him a parcel. And he says that inside is like a perfumed lotion. You should tell your mother to put it on her face. And it should help with the entire situation. And as quickly as he had come, he disappeared. Indeed, she put it on her face, and it cured her of her ugliness, if you will. That her likeness above finally was reflected below. And as a result, finally, the father was able and willing to return, and the family was made whole once again.